All right, I'm gonna do the thing.
Right.
Welcome to Previously on X-Men, the podcast that looks at X-Men comics, movies, shows, characters, and more. Today is the day we've all been waiting for.
Christmas Day?
I'm Hilary.
I'm Eric.
Not Christmas. Today we're talking about the first episode of X-Men 97.
All right.
To me, my X-Men, which is that thing that Xavier says.
Yeah, the thing that he says, like, maybe twice in the entire comic, I don't know. It's one of those things that really wasn't said that much, and then, like, later on, writers kept saying it because they thought it was said a lot, and now it's been made into a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, beam me up, Scotty.
Yes, it was said maybe twice or something in the original series, and then everybody else in, like, the 70s and 80s and 90s were like, it's always said, and now it's said, like, every other issue, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah, they say it a lot, and I don't super like it to begin with. It's just kind of weird to be like, my X-Men. It feels very, like, paternalistic, I guess.
Yeah, they say it, like, when they're serving dinner these days, you know? Like, to me, my X-Men, the chalupas are done. And it's like, I get it when it's Xavier about to have a mission, and he needs to call, but it's like in Avengers Endgame, when Cap America is like, Avengers assemble, but then everybody is already assembled. Like, they're more assembled than they've ever been, and that's when he says it.
So, just to confirm, we're to be assembled now.
Yes, this is the time we were supposed to be assembled, and you're confirming it by asking us to assemble, but we are, in fact, assembled, and we are, in fact, at you, your X-Men.
So, we can all agree, assembled. Mm-hmm.
Because he never says it in the 90s cartoon. Nobody says it in the 90s cartoon, right?
Yeah. But anyway, that's the name because, you know, that's sort of the theme of the episode. Do you want facts? I have facts.
Sure.
Okay.
I love a good fact.
This originally aired not back in the 90s, but on March 20, 2024. Now, we say aired. We mean, I guess it came out on streaming at that time.
Yeah.
So this is directed by Jake Castorina. He's done a lot of DC stuff. Batman Unlimited, Justice League Action.
Oh, yeah.
It was written by Bo DeMaio, who wrote episodes of Strange New Worlds, which I love, and Moon Knight, which I don't.
Oh, yeah, I haven't watched that because I heard not great things.
We've got a bunch of people from the original series coming back. Allison Seeley-Smith is back as Storm, and in my opinion, is the most successful return.
She is the one that sounds exactly like she did in the 90s. It's ridiculous, especially when you compare her to some of the other returning voice actors. It's crazy. And she is not, and I don't mean this in a wrong way, but she's not a young, like, none of these returning actors are young people. Like, they started X-Men, the cartoon, in 92, you know? So that's 30 years on. So at the best, they're in their 50s, but no, I actually saw, I didn't go up and talk to her, but I saw Allison Seeley-Smith at a comic convention I was at recently. I saw her from a distance, and I didn't go up and say anything because I'm a coward. But I'm just a coward. Like,
that's disappointing.
Yeah, these returners are not, you know, young. What do we call them? Young chickens.
They're not spring chickens, Eric.
Yeah, they're not spring chickens. But for some reason, she sounds exactly the same, and I was blown away with it because I was ready to pick at each, like, oh, they sound too old. There's actually some other people in other episodes, I think, get away with it as well, too. But not everybody in the main cast gets away with it, unfortunately.
Yeah, it varies from line to line, I feel like. But I found, because I watched the whole season, like you did, and went back to watch the individual episodes. So this is my second time seeing this episode. And watching it a second time, it felt less stark, the differences in the voices. I think the very first time I watched it, I was like fresh out of the original and I was like, I don't know. But now this time I was like, okay, this is fine. I kind of rolled with it.
Yeah.
So now on a scale from 1 to Storm, we have to rate the rest of them. So Cal Dodd comes back as Wolverine. What do you think?
I think Cal Dodd as Wolverine is the worst sounding one.
Oh, interesting.
I feel like every time he talks, it's like he slips into the Wolverine, like how some of them slip out of it and you're like, yeah, you're a little too old. I feel like his old person voice is there more, and sometimes he sounds like Wolverine.
Yeah, that could be. You know what I think he really sounds right is when he's doing his cute little one-liners. Like when he's just being Wolverine and like, I'm tough. I think the old person comes out, but like he has lines with Scott where he's like, thanks, Dad, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I feel like he kind of sounds better.
I don't know what it is. It's like, he really just sounds, and Wolverine isn't a young character either. He's supposed to be like 200 years old, but it's still like the way he's drawn in this, it still just sounds off with his voice. It's just, his normal voice just sounds so like kind of worn out and older, and then when he's doing the Wolverine voice, it's like I don't know, it doesn't work for me anymore.
Yeah,
like,
that's a bummer.
He was an exaggerated voice even in the 90s one. You know, sounded like, whereas the other ones sounded like interesting voices, he still sounded like he was putting on a voice. And I think it's just a lot more obvious and not great in 2024.
Yeah, I could see that. So, okay, so he's the worst for you.
Yeah, I would at this moment, unless somebody else comes back in a later episode, I'm like, oh yeah. But I think he is the worst.
Okay. So we also have Lenore Zahn coming back as Rogue, and I love Lenore Zahn as Rogue.
Yeah.
She gets the worst slot for me.
She's right above Wolverine for me. And I think the problem for her, besides the fact that she does sound like she's aged 30 years, is that Rogue is drawn very young, and she's got like a very kind of button nose. You know what I mean?
That's true. Yeah, the art makes her even look younger than the original.
And when she's talking, it does sound like, all right, Sonny.
Yeah, that's true.
Come and have a listen with Grandma Rogue.
I didn't hear it so much as like an old sounding voice. It just didn't sound, I don't know, it didn't sound settled somehow. It's like she's not doing the voice as much or something. I don't know.
I guess I keep saying old because I know like they did get older, but it's it
might just be like an out of practice kind of thing, because I don't know how many of these people are like still working as voice actors.
I don't know. You know, there's the speaking of the DC animated movies, they did a Adam West reunion animated movie called
I saw that.
Something the Cape Crusader, and they bring back Adam West, they bring back
Burt Ward,
and they bring back Julie Newmar, and that was definitely like,
that was rough.
Man, I see you're looking delicious, man. And it's just like, oh boy, oh no, yeah. Rogue. It's just because more so than like Wolverine. Sound like I said, Carl Dodd in the 90s, Cal Dodd, it sounded like he was putting on a voice. Rogue just had an interesting voice, and I had heard that voice actor in other shows, and that's just her voice. But the whole voice has changed, and it does just sound like it doesn't fit. And I don't want to be rude and say old, but like with the character design for Rogue in 97, there's a clash of design and voice, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think I would have been like, I know I would have been upset if they recast Rogue. Yeah. So I'm glad that they went with Lenore Zahn, but you know.
Yeah, I don't know.
She does a fine job. It's not terrible. It's just if we're rating them, it stands out.
Yeah, it's not that they're bad actors.
Oh, no, yeah, the acting
that's not
works.
What I'm saying. And Lenore Zahn gets to do a lot of them, her and Allison Seeley Smith get to do a lot more like acting in these roles than they necessarily got to do in the 90s. Maybe Allison Seeley Smith as Storm, because Storm was always played over the top and didn't have like a lot of nuanced acting scenes where she does in this series.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lenore Zahn is still a good actor. in this role. It's just the voice has changed in a way that isn't beneficial.
Yeah.
And the other returner is George Buza
as Beast.
Yeah.
He's pretty good. I think he is I would say second under Storm.
Yeah, I think with him, he does sound older. Like his voice has gotten more worn out. But I think the role of Beast gives more allowance for that.
Yeah.
And I think it's noticeable, but I think just the character, it still fits in a way that maybe Wolverine and Rogue, it doesn't necessarily fit.
Yeah. I mean, he's got the whole professor vibe to him, you know, it just kind of works.
Yeah.
So, all that to say, we love all of these people and think that they do fantastic jobs, but have decided for some reason to rate their voice.
I think if I had listened to a demo tape and I only had one choice, I probably would have recast Wolverine, which I'm sure would have gotten a lot of people like, how could they do this? But not everything needs to be legacy.
It's true.
Anywho.
Food for thought.
There are a few more returning voice actors, which were surprising when I first saw it. But and technically, there is another returning voice actor, just in a different role.
Yeah, because Catherine Disher comes back from she was Jean, but now this time she's Val Cooper, Dr. Cooper.
Well, I mean, when you listen to her as Valerie Cooper, it's pretty obvious why. But at the same time, that feels also kind of sexist because when you listen to Cal Dodd as Wolverine, I feel like it's the same thing.
Yeah, I don't know, but she does a good job as Val.
Also, to be fair, some of these voice actors, like we got Ray Chase as Cyclops. Our previous Cyclops passed away. Gosh, I want to say it was in like 2019. I could be wrong, but
that's right.
It was a fairly recent pass away, and which is too bad because he was a really good Cyclops voice. And what you hear from the other voice actors is that outside of the recording for Cyclops is that he was really funny. And I think he could have done a lot of the stuff they do with Cyclops in this series really well.
Mm-hmm. But, that's a sad missed opportunity.
But anyway, Ray Chase is fine as Cyclops. He has the voice.
Yeah.
I guess it's a decent one-to-one. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Do you think he sounds like original recipe Cyclops?
I think that he has enough tonal correlations with the original that it's like, yeah, I get why they did that, and he does a fine job. I think that you're right that so Norm Spencer was the original Cyclops in the original show. I think that you're right that he brought something else that's kind of undefinable that the new guy doesn't so much bring, which it's hard to blame someone, but I think that Cyclops as a character is so easy to do very like straight and like, I don't know, uninteresting. And so, you know, I think that Ray does a really good job. I think that he sounds like Cyclops, and he has some opportunities to do a little more, you know, emotional acting with him in this season that I think he's successful with.
This Cyclops gets to do a lot of confidence and gets to be a bit more jokey, and I think Norm Spencer would have anyway, but it's not the case. And so we have Ray Chase, and we have like one of the most prolific voice actors, period, in Jennifer Hale as Jean Grey instead of Catherine Disher.
Yeah, and of course she's voiced Jean a bunch of other times in the anime and Wolverine and the X-Men and Ultimate Alliance 3. I think she voiced Rogue at some point in some iteration of the X-Men.
Maybe, I mean, if you've seen something with voice acting, there's a good chance Jennifer Hale is in it. Video games, movies, shows. She's just, you know, constantly working.
Yeah, she was X-Men Next Dimension was a video game in 2002 so at least once. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there was a little bit more.
Next Dimension. Sorry, I turned it to Pauly Shore there, but that's what X-Men Next Dimension. All right, 1-on-1 2D fighting with semi-3D environments. I played a lot of X-Men Next Dimension.
Okay, so you're familiar. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. That's good. Yeah, so I think she does a good job. I think that she, obviously knows what she's doing. So I don't know that I really super missed the original Jean voice.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing is, like, I don't know if Catherine Disher, outside of the Phoenix episodes, ever really got great material as Jean.
Yeah.
Because she's good as Valerie Cooper.
Oh, yeah, she is very... I find Valerie Cooper one of the more compelling characters in this season. So I think she's great. And I think the voice is a good chunk of that. So good for her.
Yeah.
I think that the Jean Grey not having awesome story stuff maybe continues a little bit in this season. Probably not quite as much, but I didn't find most of her stuff particularly compelling.
Well, we'll see then, won't we?
So, okay, that's her. Then we've got Morph. He's up front with the big kids.
Yeah.
JP Karliak is his voice. Their voice, sorry.
I think they're on the younger side of voice actors, but anyway, I like them as Morph, and I think
it's a good voice.
I like them as Morph more than the original voice actor for sure.
Yeah.
That's been a nice change for me because the original voice actor was very like, look what I did, guys. Whoa.
And it didn't make any sense because like the most interesting thing to me about Morph is that Morph in the original is Wolverine's best friend.
That's how they,
And the voice originally does not make sense to me for that.
Yeah, well, you know, the original Morph voice was very like, this is a funny character in 1992.
Yeah.
And it just, it is definitely a dated kind of sound for today's world.
Yeah. But the way that it works in this season, I feel like you can see why they would be friends.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
I feel like it's a voice with character, but it's also not a voice that is just character. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Like a person.
Yeah, Morph sounds like a person in this when they speak, and they're still able to play funny.
Yeah.
I think there's, not in this first episode, but there are some funny Morph moments later on, and also some good acting moments later on. So I do think this is an improvement for Morph. Not that, like, I'm a hardcore Morph fan in the world of X-Men that I'm like, they better get Morph right. It's just, you know, after the 90s series, I'm glad we got a real voice on this.
Yeah. If we were going to bring Morph back, better voice.
We also have Holly Chow playing Jubilee.
Yep.
Replacing Allison Court. I think just because now that it's not the 90s, they realize it's good to cast Asian actresses and actors in Asian roles, which Jubilee was not in the original 90s.
Mm-hmm.
But Allison Court will show up, and I kind of like that little that moment. So we'll talk about that when we get there.
Yeah, I like that they slip little things in there.
I actually had to double check. I had to go online and double check because I thought Holly Cho sounded very similar to Allison Court.
Yeah, I think it's not so much the sound as the attitude. Like I feel like she's got that Jubilee like 90s teenager vibe.
Yeah. It was an easy transition for me.
Yeah. And she also gets more, I mean, everybody gets more opportunities for acting in this season.
I guess they also recast Bishop, but I mean, how many lines does he have?
Yeah. They kind of dump him kind of early in the show. I thought he was going to be a big part of the show.
Yeah. Isaac Robinson Smith plays Bishop here. He
does a good job. I mean, he's got good moments, particularly in like the fight scenes and stuff.
He's here for a second. So we get this whole show opens with a new. I mean, it might not be new. They might have used it on something I didn't watch, but it's new to me. This Marvel animation logo. I guess they probably used it for the What If series. I found incredibly boring.
Very boring. Yeah, I think they did. I think I've seen it a couple times. It was fun to see, just sort of, because that's sort of like the MCU representation for animation. That was kind of fun.
I'm not a fan of a few things. I don't know if you want me to gripe about it or just talk about. I will
give you 5 minutes to gripe.
Oh my gosh, that's so much more time than I thought I'd have.
I will give you 1 minute.
I'm not a fan of selective memory in that. Like modern fans would be like, yeah, everything before the MCU sucked, everything after is good and stuff. So I'm not a fan of like the X-Men movies getting ripped on because this show is good.
People are ripping on the X-Men movies?
Hilary, people have been ripping on the X-Men movies since the year 2000.
Oh, dare they?
But also, I'm not a fan of people just being like, yes, content, let me drink the Kool-Aid. So I'm not like a huge fan that they're like Marvel animation, and it's all these shows that other people made and worked on, and Disney's now just incorporating it in their banner. It's all sucks. Marvel legacy stuff, baby. It's like, yeah, Deadpool and Wolverine is a big hit because somebody else did the work for you, Disney.
Right.
Spider-Man No Way Home was a big hit because other people cast Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield and did the work for you, Disney. So I guess that kind of rubs me the wrong way with the Marvel animation logo. It's nice that some of the older stuff is in there. Like the 90s Silver Surfer cartoon gets an image, which seems like a real deep pull, but
yeah.
We get a new character intro to the show, which incorporates Morph and Bishop, even though Bishop is at most there.
Yeah, that was really disappointing. I saw that he was in the intro and I was like, sweet, more Bishop, great. And then they were just like, into the future.
Yeah, it's a bummer. I think Morph's intro, because what are you going to do with Morph other than just have them transform into somebody? But I like the kind of like that fluid animation they give Morph when dodging those blasts and then just jumping and punch. It's not really like everybody else. You kind of like, oh, this is their power or their thing. And Morph isn't so much that, but I think the fluid nature of them dodging the blast kind of alludes to that.
Yeah.
I also like, and we'll see this going on, that the intro changes during some episodes.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, they do. Like, they add characters, don't they?
Yeah, add characters, take characters away, throw in some other flashbacky stuff. When they're charging at each other in the middle at the end of the intro, they've replaced some of the villains with actual villains. Because if you remember, there was like
just random
Warpath, and then that one character
that's like nobody. Head. That's just made up.
Yeah, so we get, Lady Deathstrike and
Sabretooth's in there.
Sabretooth's still in there. Then we also get the title. That's X-Men, classic X-Men 90s, and then it says 97. Hilary, what do you think of the title X-Men 97? Because the show started in 92. It ended in 97. There's a comic that Marvel released called X-Men 92.
I think it's supposed to be the year that it is set.
Yeah.
Like the X-Men in the year 1997.
Yeah.
I don't know what else they would have done. Just like the X-Men again.
Oh, Hilary, we forgot to talk about your boy.
Yes.
Friend.
My boyfriend.
Yeah.
AJ Lacazio?
Yeah, you have some interesting facts about him, you say?
I do, yes, because this guy in the Back to the Future video games, he's Marty McFly.
Okay.
Which I don't know that that's a similar voice at all.
Oh, like the Telltale game. Sure. Yeah. I haven't played that, so I don't have a comparison there.
Well, I mean, just imagine Michael J. Fox. Yeah. I mean...
Okay.
I would not have assumed that this was someone who had done Marty McFly in the Back to the Future video games. But anyway, so he did that. And he also did Owen Grady in the Jurassic World video game.
Yep, Jurassic World Evolution, which is not the best game in the world, but I did 100% it. Like, I 5-starred every island. I got every dinosaur. I did as much in that game as possible. In fact, I'm pretty sure on Steam, one of my rarest achievements is a 1% of players who have played Jurassic World has it. Says you do plan to have dinosaurs, right? And that is one that I have because I just kept playing the game.
Yeah. Of course.
So yeah, Owen Grady being the Chris Pratt character.
Oh, okay. I was just going to ask you that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he was great as Gambit.
He is good.
It was a good homage to the original.
Chris Potter?
But kind of like...
So, just I got to get this out there. In order to get that achievement I got, you had to construct a tour that can see at least 18 species in a Jurassic Park campaign or challenge mode. And I definitely did it. You could see more than 18 species on this tour.
Listen, I'm not remotely surprised.
All right.
I feel like I've been on this tour just being your friend.
Thanks. Yeah, I think they are a good Gambit.
Yeah.
Chris Potter, I also thought was a great Gambit.
Yeah.
And I kind of miss them as Gambit just because they have that voice in the 90s. But maybe Chris Potter makes a return later on. We'll see.
What?
Oh, I guess we'll see. Okay.
So I guess we should talk about like what happens, right?
Well, sure. But do you like the new version of the music at the intro? It's kind of redone a bit. Yeah. It's the same thing, just modernized, I guess.
I think they did a pretty good job of like the images and the music of just being like, hey, remember this? But without just showing the exact same thing. So I thought that was just fun.
Okay.
So there's no previously on X-Men, I don't think, which I was a little surprised by.
The show in the future makes references, I guess not in the future, just the show will say stuff has happened because it happened in the 90s show. But, you know, in some of the future opening sequences, they do reanimate shots from the original 90s series to incorporate in the musical intro, but they never use like previously on X-Men and then show something from the 90s Phoenix Saga or the 90s Mr. Sinister stuff. But they do show clips. And I don't know, maybe it's a rights thing?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it has to have been a conscious decision for some reason, but I mean, I could have used like a previously on X-Men, here's what the heck is happening
Hilary could use a primer every episode for any
Pretty much. But I mean, okay, so it starts with like a news or whatever being like, so it's been a year since Xavier died, remember? So that sort of counts.
So when we talked about the last episode, it's hard to tell if the X-Men are acting like he's dead.
Yeah.
Sometimes, because they call Lilandra to save him in that, but the X-Men still act like they act like he's gone, but sometimes they also act like he's just dead.
They do act like that. Yeah.
Which they know he's not, but the world thinks he's dead. They do think that Gyrich killed him. And so they are just... So they know he's not dead, but they are letting Gyrich go to jail for murder.
For murder, yes.
So they're not always on the up and up.
Interesting. But yeah, I do think that they are aware, but particularly Cyclops does a lot with like reacting as if he's like the oldest son of a father who died.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he's gone.
Yeah.
I guess they don't expect to ever see him again. So
yeah. I've had friends move to like California, and I'm not like, if they were still with us.
I've had friends move to North Carolina, and they might as well not exist.
Yeah.
That's you, Eric.
What?
You're the one.
I've been doing this podcast with you since 2019 or something.
That's true.
So yeah, it opens with the news thing. We kind of get the idea that mutants have it a little bit better because of that. Like, mutant sympathy has started to appear, and we'll get some commentary on that as we move forward.
We hear a lot about there being a better sentiment towards mutants in the world, but most of what we see is the jerks.
Yeah, we never see that to be true.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll have to believe them.
Yeah.
But the next scene is literally not that.
Right, yeah. We've got the Friends of Humanity back again. Hooray.
Yeah.
And they've kidnapped Roberto. What's his last name? Roberto da Costa? Is that it?
Yeah.
Roberto da Costa, who is one of the new mutants. Am I right about that?
Yep. Sunspot.
And he's being a little rich jerk and being like, no, I'm one of the good mutants and I'll pay you to let me go.
Oh, so crap. He deserves to be kidnapped, Hilary?
I'm just saying he's being a jerk. And the Friends of Humanity are like, we don't care. You're a mutant and we hate mutants because we're horrible people.
Yeah, they say something like, one of the good ones. Yeah, right.
Yes.
There's such a thing.
Beautiful rendition. So we have them kind of going back and forth. And we see a little bit of the Friends of Humanity being, they must be funded or something because they've got new weapons and things. And one of them mentions that they're sort of collecting mutants for someone else who's like going to pay them for them.
Yeah, what was it? 10,000? Not a lot.
I don't know. But they're like assuming that it's somebody who's like trying to do a most dangerous game or whatever with them.
Yeah, we'll find out later what that is. But the FOH, I guess I never like them because they're one, they're jerks, but they're very one-dimensional. They're one-dimensional. Like, every character in the Friends of Humanity is very one-dimensional. But at the same time, in the past couple of years, I've also learned that a lot of people are very one-dimensional villains. And
yeah, it's less of a no way kind of a reaction.
Sometimes we don't need to see Jafar as a nuanced villain. Sometimes villains are villains, and we shouldn't elect them as president. So,
hypothetically speaking.
Right. And so I think the other thing is, and we talked about this when we were doing the original series, the Friend of Humanity, they still hit home today. Unfortunately. And that will be in the next episode. We'll really get to talk about that. But I don't love them as a character. I find them very uninteresting. But if you want a real world allegory for how bigots are, they're as accurate as they get, I guess.
They're not bad.
I know, in the 90s, I think they felt a bit more like a caricature.
Yeah.
And today they almost seem like, I don't know, real.
Well, it almost feels like too on the nose. You know what I mean? Like, there are a couple times when I'm watching them when I'm like, is this too preachy because it's too real?
Yeah. We see a poster that says Marrow is missing.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, it's in kind of shadow. It's on a light post. Like you said, this is taking place in the 90s, and the show works hard to remind us of that, but I kind of just didn't need it. We could have just had it present day, and I wouldn't have asked, but wait a second, this is in the 90s.
Yeah, that's probably true. But so Roberto is kidnapped by the Friends of Humanity, and they're being, the way that they are. Yeah. And then
Storm shows up.
Storm arriving, and boy, is she confident.
Yeah.
It's just like, hi, everybody. I'm here to kill you all.
She doesn't kill them. She comes down and tries to talk to them. They're like, we're not afraid of you. And she's like, you are a fool then.
Yep.
She's still very operatic in all her weather powers, which drives me insane. Because if we were going to drop anything, I would have picked that from the original series.
You can't lose that. Come on.
Oh, can't we? But yeah, she tries to scare them away. Bishop shows up and is like, we just gotta ice them. And she's like, sorry, I was trying to handle this non-violently. And then they start shooting at them. And
well, I thought that was funny because she does say that. And then Bishop is like, oh yeah, well, you're doing a great job, because my impression was Bishop's impression that she was not actually trying to do anything soft.
I'm confused why the Friends of Humanity can take on Storm and Bishop, because they both get knocked out.
I think it's the tech. I think it's the new tech that they got.
Yeah, but still.
I think the X-Men show up not remotely anticipating any pushback. I think that they're like, these are a bunch of douchebags who just got lost down some internet wormhole, so we're just gonna swoop in and get Roberto back.
I always think of the Peter Holmes YouTube video where he's Xavier and he's firing Wolverine from the team, because he's like, let's say we're fighting Magneto, who controls metal, and you show up on a motorcycle, and we have to wait for you. Meanwhile, Storm has sucked Magneto into a GD hurricane. And so whenever Storm is knocked out or needs help, I'm like, but can't she just make a hurricane?
Wouldn't that be good? Storm, though, gets a good showing in this.
Yes, this is a cool intro. And then later in this episode, they give Storm some very cool moments.
Yeah.
But Cyclops shows up. And Hilary, Cyclops is cool again.
He's cool again.
He was cool in the 90s cartoon.
I don't know how cool he was.
A few times. I think we sometimes forget that he did get to be cool because they played him as the just confident leader sometimes, but because of how he has to interact with Wolverine, he also gets that rap of not being cool.
Yes, that is true.
And then also, as much as I love the movies, Cyclops is not a character who has ever been served well in that.
I think you can just stop at not a character.
Yeah. Either in the original cast or even when they recast him for the prequels, he still does not get to be the Cyclops.
I mean, they cast James Marsden in the first, and I've seen him since, and he's fantastic. And he's just he's like a doorstop in those movies anyway. We don't have to get into that.
Well, I was going to say, like, sometimes I feel like we laugh at people when they say Cyclops is their favorite X-Men. But there is a reason why he does end up as some people's favorite X-Men. And I think this show kind of proves why some people's favorite X-Men is Cyclops.
Those people are nerds.
Yeah, I mean, they're still nerds. Let's not act.
But no, he does. It is a good entrance. Like he goes up to Roberto, and Roberto's like, "What's going on?" And he's like, "I'm Cyclops."
Yeah,
and he uses his powers in cool, interesting new ways, which I think is nice.
He gets to be a more one-on-one fighter a lot of times. Yes, he gets to use his power. He gets to be confident. He gets to be just like that cool, confident Cyclops that does appear in the comics a lot, that like Grant Morrison wrote in his run, and is the character that people become fans of, and it's nice that they give him that. In fact, I think
confidence, I feel like, is the thing that stands out the most in this season, because he's just, I think he, more than any of the other characters, is like, okay, well, I'm here, so everything's gonna work out because I can handle all of this.
Yep. I think one of the other characters actually takes a hit in likability because of Cyclops getting a more positive presentation in this.
Interesting.
So yeah, Cyclops basically ends the fight, and it's such a dorky way too. I mean, I just talked about how cool he is in this, but he's like, "No, don't take my visor, I need that." And then he's like, "Nah." And I'm like, "Oh no, we don't do that." Well,
Here's the thing, because it is actually objectively a cool thing that he does, because they're like, take his visor so that he can't blast or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then he obviously can still do that. So he opens his eyes and blasts them. But yeah, they have to do the 90s knot, and it's pretty lame.
Yeah. It's kind of like in Spider-Man 3, when he gets the suit, he's acting all, cool and bad boyish, but then it's really dorky. Mm-hmm. I've seen some people defend how when Peter is dancing in the streets and we're all laughing, well, Peter Parker is cool and confident now, but he has no idea what being cool is. So this is what he thinks is cool, like those dances and all that stuff. He's being what Peter Parker thinks is cool. And I think maybe we could also say that's what Cyclops is doing here. Like he thinks oh, what's something Wolverine would say? Nah.
Not.
PRTY? Because I've got to. Yeah, Cyclops has been studying The Mask.
Yes, and nailing it.
This year, just for these occasions.
Anywho, so then back at the mansion, apparently they solved the problem. Like, it wasn't entirely clear, but...
No, he did, because he blew up the entire warehouse with that last optic blast.
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
Very impressive.
Cyclops is complaining that we needed you there, and it turns out he's talking to Gambit, because sometimes he also complains about Gambit. And
he likes to complain about people. This is his thing, though, especially in this episode. He's like, the team is not pulling their weight.
Yeah. The professor! But what is he making? What does he say he's making?
Gambit is making beignets.
That's right. These beignets needed me more than you did.
Yes, which is cute. Like, it's Gambit cooking, and he's got the little crop top. It's adorable. Yep. And then Cyclops, while he is reaming out Gambit, is carefully setting the table with all of the silverware for them all to eat. Yeah. And then they lay out the plates. And I noticed this time that each plate for each person has 7 beignets on it.
Well, how filling are beignets?
And I don't think you eat that many.
I've never had
little donuts.
Well, I could eat.
I don't think it's
donuts.
The kind of thing that you would lay out for each place setting. It's their own stack.
No, Beast puts him away.
You're right. He knows his audience.
To be fair to Gambit, Cyclops did take Bishop and Storm to the Friends of Humanity. So it's not really Gambit's fault. It's more that, you're right, they were caught unaware.
Yeah, but this is kind of our nice little, homey moment, which that I love.
Like. Yeah, where they're just hanging out in the kitchen, having a good time.
Yes, so it's Gambit and Cyclops, and then Rogue comes in, and she's like, "You're taking everything too seriously."
Rogue is so pretty in this show.
Aww.
She is! Her hair...
She is pretty.
Her hair looks great. They've redesigned her face a little bit. I noticed it in the nose and stuff. She's just a pretty character.
Yeah, she is pretty. And you know something that I've noticed?
What?
Her figure, they have tamed it down.
A little bit.
Like her stomach is not like the tiniest little thing with like an enormous butt. Like it's obviously still an unrealistic expectation.
You're saying we're not going to get that booty shot that we got in that one Apocalypse episode from the 90s?
Oh, for heaven's sake, no.
Where it's like half the screen is her butt.
I just appreciate any amount of,
yeah.
You know, she's like a reasonably normal shaped person, which is nice.
Jean shows up and she's preggers.
Well, first, Morph comes in with a really, like, in poor taste impression because Cyclops is, like, lamenting the loss of Xavier.
I miss my father.
And Morph comes in, like, as Xavier and, like, does this whole thing. I'm like, he just, like, this is not cool, man.
Yep.
But anyway, so that happens. And then, yes, then pregnant Jean bursts onto the scene.
Hilary, you should say burst.
Because she's pregnant?
Because she's pregnant. That would mean she's having the baby.
I didn't say Nate burst onto the scene.
She's very pregnant, as we learn in the next episode. Like, she's due any moment, basically.
Yeah, but still very active, because she's just come from a workout.
I guess.
They're talking somehow about... the conversation turns sort of to Roberto, who then wakes up in Beast's lab and is like, what is happening? And Beast is listening to the Queen of the Night aria, which is funny because he's singing along with it.
Yeah.
So it's one of those, like, you wake up and you're looking around and everything's weird. And so, like, there's Beast and he looks crazy and he's singing a song and then Jubilee's right in his face and is like, I get it. I've been introduced to this group, I guess.
There's a lot of stuff that I feel like Roberto should know. Like, I have a feeling as a mutant, Roberto would know who the X-Men are, would know who Professor Xavier is, and would also know who Magneto and Sentinels are.
Yeah, that does seem... I mean, I think more... Like, I kind of understand him just avoiding mutant gossip or whatever, because he doesn't really like being a mutant, but it sort of seems like in this particular iteration of the X-Men, they're like public figures. Like, people know who the X-Men are, people know all of these things.
Right, like, when he's trying not to be a mutant, he's not trying to be in that world. Like, if there were robots going around attacking people, it doesn't really matter what's going on in your life. You're probably going to hear about it.
You're going to know that that's a thing that happened.
I mean, Magneto, he talked to the UN and then put an asteroid in space. You know, you're going to hear about it.
Yeah, maybe he's lying. He's like, what? Who? I don't know what you're talking about.
And Roberto wants to leave and everything, but they're trying to tell him, like, we're not kidnapping you, but we just need to know why you're in danger and how these people got the tech that they did. So as soon as that's done, you can leave to go back to whatever life you want. Roberto's kind of a jerk.
Yeah, I think he's continuing his trend of being just a little rich jerk.
He's kind of a jerk in the comics at times.
Yeah, it fits. Cyclops, I feel like, has a good moment with this, like, talking to Roberto. He just feels very, like, a reasonable adult. Because when they're talking about, like, you know, we're not kidnapping you. Like, Storm's like, if we let you go, people will hunt you down and kill you. And then Cyclops is like, listen, you know, we don't want to be controlling your life. Just give us a day to figure out how to keep you safe. And then you can go about your business. And he just seems very reasonable. And, like, I'm like, yeah, I trust you.
So he asks what else there is to do around there, and Jubilee shows him the danger room and has him go up against Magneto, whose facial design I hate in this show.
I don't like it. Yeah, it's bad.
It's like he's wearing a heavy amount of eyeliner, and they give him those lines on his face that just look... It's probably to make him look old, but it looks like he has no meat on his bones whatsoever.
I feel like he looks like an old woman. Like, there's something kind of soft about his features. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I just do not like his design in this.
And I'm just going to say it. I don't like his voice.
His voice has moments, but the other voice actor was so good.
Yeah.
You can hear that they were trying to get a similar sounding voice and cadence. But at the same time, it almost sounds like the voice is younger than the facial design.
Yeah. I don't know. I just feel like he doesn't sell it nearly as well. Like, he just sounds, you know.
I also bet he looks bad without a shirt. I bet if we ever saw him in just the Speedo, he would be old and flabby and not jacked.
Don't wish for that.
Packs of muscles all up and down his chest.
Oh my gosh. Stop describing naked Magneto.
Anyways, Roberto is like, it's just a video game. None of this is real. And then he gets attacked by Wolverine. He's like, this is dumb. Turn the game off. And so Wolverine says end program. And it's just him. And Roberto's like, ah! And Wolverine's like,
he was there in real life.
Yeah, that's our first time seeing Wolverine, which is kind of a homage to the first show where the first time we saw Wolverine was him being in the middle of a danger room.
Yeah. So then we've got
Valerie
elsewhere
Cooper
in the mansion. Yeah. Syke and Jean are talking to Dr. Cooper, which, speaking of homages to the original series, she's on a treadmill.
Yep.
Like the president in the original.
Right. She's not the president. It ended. We're still in the continuity where Senator Kelly is President Kelly. Yeah.
Cooper is somehow with the UN. I don't know what exactly her job is.
She's in charge of like superhero law, basically.
Okay, she's in charge of superhero law.
Well, yeah, like if it's the like equivalent of the FBI, but for superpowered beings and stuff.
Okay, sure.
Basically, what Henry Gyrich is when he's not in prison.
Ah, yes, excellent.
Yeah.
So they're talking to her, basically like.
Catherine Disher.
We need to get a handle on this situation.
Yeah, yes. Catherine Disher as Val Cooper.
Mm-hmm. And she's like sympathetic, but kind of professional. She's like, the UN can only do so much, whatever. And Syke is kind of a jerk to her, but holding his line, like.
Yeah, it's that Cyclops. I feel like it's a more modern take on Cyclops, like.
Yes.
Post House of M, the whole decimation Cyclops that gets very zealotous and mutants first mentality. I think throughout this series we see a Cyclops that could become that Cyclops that's like, no, Utopia is ours and we won't give it up, and Cyclops that gets a little bit more extremist.
Yes. Yep, we definitely
because he says stuff like, you're the government's the one that made robots to hunt us and stuff, which is true.
It is true.
But yeah, he gets a lot more I play by the rules, but maybe the rules need to be changed.
Yeah, and he's just very, like you attack us, so we're gonna attack you. Like he doesn't split hairs.
Yeah, there's a lot of like passive threats, I think.
Yes. He's just standing over here with his crazy power. He's not saying
we're attacking you, but he reminds people, don't come at us.
Yeah, which is, a more modern take on, like a more recent Cyclops vibe. Yep. So we find out, I guess we probably already know, but Cooper says she's a friend of Xavier's, and that's kind of why she's giving them as much leeway as she does. That scene ends. We find out now Jean and Cyclops are alone. And we see that Xavier's death certificate just arrived. And so that's kind of amping up Cyclops's general mood.
Yeah.
And just feeling like, the responsibility, like he needs to be leading the team and the team's not taking anything seriously. And so he's a failure and they're a failure. And then Jean chooses this moment to be like, what if we just left?
Yeah.
And he's kind of, like he reacts negatively, but it kind of starts to come around to the idea of like, live your life for once.
We then get basketball through the window because Jubilee is mad at Wolverine because Wolverine scared Roberto away. And now they have to go find him. And Cyclops says something and Wolverine's like, you know what the worst part about losing the professor was? You.
Yeah.
And Jean says, like, do it, please. And Wolverine's like, I'm going to do it for her. But here's the thing. Wolverine is too mean to Cyclops in this show. In 97, he's too mean.
Yes, I know what you mean. But also, particularly that line reads to me a lot like Brothers, whose father just died. Yeah.
It does. I hear I wish you had been the one to die instead of him. But I guess what confuses me, and maybe you can help me understand this, is I feel like Wolverine is too much of a jerk in this. Like, he often was too much of a jerk in the 90s cartoon. But I feel like he's too much of a jerk again And they are still trying to play up the Jean, Scott, Wolverine love triangle. And I guess I don't necessarily understand what Jean sees in this Wolverine. Because to me, it's just like, man, this guy's an a-hole. And maybe she just likes the confidence and the bossing and stuff. But I feel like they don't play up well what someone would see in Wolverine. And later on, we kind of get the idea that she likes how much Wolverine likes her.
Yes.
But that's also not... That makes sense, but it's also not necessarily like you gotta like somebody for more than just how much they like you.
Well, yes, that would be the healthy thing.
And also...
Here's what I think.
Okay.
What I think is that the Jean Wolverine thing is a very well-known thing. And in the original series, they would hint at it here and there with like Wolverine being like, oh, well, if Jean says so, whatever. But I think in the original show, they recognized a little more their limitation in dealing with that particular relationship with the kind of Wolverine that they had chosen to portray. And so they didn't really delve into it. But this season, in a million ways, is like, oh, this dramatic storyline, let's incorporate that one. This dramatic storyline, let's incorporate that one. And so they just dive right into the Cyclops, Jean, Wolverine thing, but they don't have any change. I mean, like, they can't change who this Wolverine is. And so they just sort of don't. They just act like it's a thing already.
I guess it's also that meme where it's like, you find the Jean, Cyclops, Wolverine love triangle interesting? We are not the same. Kind of thing. Because, like, I don't care. I haven't cared in so long. I blame the movies for bringing it back to the level it was.
That's true.
But I feel like I reread Grant Morrison's X-Men not too long ago, and like he throws wrenches into the Cyclops Jean relationship, but it's not. He doesn't really ham up the love triangle again. So I have to blame the movies being like Wolverine likes Jean, but also then Wolverine, the way they treated Cyclops was the better choice anyway.
Right.
And I just don't care. And I feel like, I mean, you read the Krakoa era, they were basically like, look, this is stupid too. They're all just doing it to each other, okay? No, we're done with the love triangle. It's a love throuple, all right? We're over it. And to go back, and I know this is a nostalgic series, but to go back, it's like, ugh, I can't do this again.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever seen it done well. Like, I feel like everything that I've read or seen that has this element to it does the same kind of thing where it just is like, well, we all know that this is a thing, and so they're going to act like it's a thing. But I've never seen anyone really justify it.
It's only interesting in the comics, and even, like, Chris Claremont's the one who started it, but even, like, he decided to, like, go... I mean, yes, they killed Jean, but even after she came back, it was still not really a thing until, you know, the movies again. And so I'm not interested.
Well, you know what?
In
it's
any
a
of these
thing
scenes.
now.
Yeah. They go to a dance club, to find Roberto and to get there before the Friends of Humanity. Jubilee does a cute little dance shimmy when she gets in there right away.
Mm-hmm.
With just her hands just back and forth like I would do. But it's endearing when she does it, and it's sad when I do it.
Very, very sad.
But I like it because Jubilee was always played very young in the 90s cartoon, even though she's a teenager. I mean, I assume she's supposed to be like 16 or something. And in this series, we know she turns 18. So she was I always felt like she was supposed to be on the older teens.
Yeah.
So it's nice that they can still play on the young, but also she's an X-Men. She's grown up, so she's a mature teenager. She's a confident, mature teenager, and she gets to have some of those moments in this series.
Yeah.
And I like this little moment where she gets to just be a kid who gets to the club, hears music, and is like, all right.
Yeah, this is a good scene. The structuring of this episode, I feel like, is pretty good because you have a lot of drama, you have a lot of, fighting and things, but then you have this moment at just the right time where they're searching for Roberto. It's a pretty low stakes situation. Like they think someone's probably after him, but whatever, let's go find this kid. They end up in a nightclub and they split up and everyone just sort of uses it as an opportunity to have a good time for a little bit while they're looking for him.
This feels very 90s, but not in the cartoon way. This feels 90s in like if you were watching a genre drama in the 90s, like X-Files or Roswell or something, this would be that kind of scene. Like this, and then we'll have a scene where all the characters pair up and talk about their problems, and then something goofy happens.
Hey, it works.
This episode is basically just Night of the Sentinels in a lot of ways, the original series thing. But also, you talking about the limitations of the 90s cartoon, this scene points out to us that X-Men 97 is a sexy X-Men show.
Yes, we have to know
now. You got
now.
people kissing with tongue, you've got dancing with hands, you've got Rogue and Gambit, a lot more obvious. I mean, Jubilee calls Roberto hot multiple times, but like this nightclub scene, it's definitely like, this is an X-Men, but with sex. We put the... It's sex, man. I probably shouldn't say that.
Sex, man. But yeah, I mean, there are indications kind of throughout this episode that this is made for, like the original series is made for kids with adults being able to watch it. This is like flipped. Like this is made for the people who used to be kids and are no longer kids. And that's just it. That's just very overt.
Morph. Why did I write down Morph? Maybe just because I wanted to talk about how I like this Morph more than I liked 90s Morph. Because,
definitely,
again, Morph is more of a character in this than they are in the cartoon, where they were very like, oh, but now I'm depressed because I'm dead.
You probably wrote it down because Morph talks to Wolverine about Jean.
And it's fun because Wolverine's like, I don't want to talk about it. But to us, the audience, and obviously to the people around him, it's very obvious what's wrong with Wolverine, and Morph transforms to Jean and does that whole, I'm married to the most perfect man, and I'm having the most perfect child, and all this stuff.
No, she says, I'm going to have the most beautiful baby in the world with the most boring man in the world.
But we find out it's not exactly that. It's more that Wolverine knows that the X-Men life in the mansion is not a place to raise a baby, so they're going to leave. So it's not so much that Jean is having her happy life with Cyclops and not him. It's more that she's going to leave, and he won't even be able to be around her anymore.
Right. Because he sort of accepted his role.
They see the Friends of Humanity come in, and they smile because they know they're going to go beat him up. Jubilee finds Roberto, and she's like, you need to come back. He's like, fine, one dance. And then Jubilee gets to do a fun little firework dance and prove to us that she's cool now.
She's cool now.
She had some moments in the 90s.
Yeah. I like that she can dance and like do her powers and it doesn't freak him out. Like I sort of expected him, because he's so like, I don't want to be a mutant, to be like, just don't do that. But he was like, oh, this is fun.
Yeah, she's confident. Who doesn't love confidence in a woman like that?
That's right.
We learn because the X-Men find out what's been happening. They go to Gyrich and are like, you better tell us what's up. And he doesn't, so Jean goes into his mind and finds out where Trask is. Bolivar Trask, who created the Sentinels. It turns out they made more than one master mold. So they go to... I thought the Gyrich voice was the original voice actor, but it's a new one. Not that Gyrich was in the original series much, but he also had a distinct voice. They go to where Master Mold is, and they find Trask there, and their ship, the Blackbird, is shot down, and so they all, like, Rogue picks up those who can't fly, Morph turns into Angel, and this is a Morph. I don't remember if this was the case, and I don't think it was in the original series, that Morph basically has the powers of the people they transform into.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. It took me a while of being like, is this what's happening, but by the end, it seems pretty clear that that's the situation.
Here, Morph transforms into Angel, and you have the wings. And sure, I can get away with that, but later, Morph will transform into Colossus and have the metal skin of Colossus. Morph will transform into people with super strength and have that strength.
Right, yeah.
It becomes that Morph just has their powers.
Which is, I mean, he should be they should be the MVP.
Yeah. Cyclops is cool again because he doesn't need anyone to catch him.
Yeah, there's another cool moment. I wonder why they're trying to make Cyclops so interesting in this series.
I think it's just because, again, as much as I like the movies and some of the cartoons that followed, Cyclops definitely has gotten the short end multiple times. And I think if all you know of Cyclops is from the movies, like I know people who watched X-Men 97 who didn't watch the 90s cartoon and they really only know the movies, then this is going to be like a revelation for you. Like Cyclops as a character and his powers are cool.
Yeah.
And it's funny because he says, "Great work, team. I'll see you on the ground." But like, all they did was catch each other, which I mean it's a good job, but it doesn't seem like the mission should be getting
on the ground. I think he's just trying because he feels bad for like yelling at everybody.
Yeah, he wants to be a good team leader. They find Bolivar Trask, who's there with a master mold, and they have to fight a whole bunch of Sentinels. And so we get one of those action scenes. We've talked about the design, but we haven't talked about the new animation in general. Hilary?
Yes?
Your thoughts on the new animation style?
I think that it's good. I think the movement is really good. I think that they're very creative in like their shots and stuff like that. It's still a little more bubbly than I like. Like things are kind of smooth and shiny in a way that isn't my favorite, but it's not enough to like, I wouldn't be like, I don't like it.
It looks a lot better in motion than it does not. I don't necessarily think it looks great in stills, but
yeah,
you know, part of the problem of the original series was budget, and they had done such detailed designs that they couldn't do smooth action scenes. And sometimes I feel like it looks very Flash animation.
Yes.
But I do give it more credit than I gave it when I saw the preview for this originally.
Yeah.
I do appreciate how good the action is in this because of that animation. Like I said, I hate the Magneto redesign, and I don't necessarily know if it works. It still does kind of have a cheap quality to it, but I recently watched only the first episode of this new Batman Cape Crusader cartoon that's on Amazon Prime, and that's it's supposed to be like going back to the beginning of a very young Batman, but set in kind of a 1930s Gotham, and the animation in that feels cheap. And one thing that this show has is lighting, because I was like, yeah, let's do a 1930s Batman. Everything's going to be in shadows. It's going to look really cool. But it's all so flat. And I feel like in this, there's a lot of shadows and there's a lot of lighting and there's depth. And it's not the most beautiful animation style ever, but it has a lot more than the stuff that DC is putting out right now, which is very like, do it for the least possible amount of money. So I do appreciate the money that went into this.
Yeah.
Because, without that lighting and the coloring, I think it would look a lot flatter. But going forward in more action stuff, it's leagues ahead of how that original cartoon did action.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, it's just the best X-Men action there's been.
Probably.
There's a lot of stuff I like in X-Men 2 and some of the movies, and the other cartoons did cool X-Men action, but this is probably the best it's ever looked in terms of like having the characters move and use their powers together.
I think part of it is probably something to do with the nostalgia factor for this. Like, I feel like they really paid attention to each character and wanted to do like, what would be cool if Gambit did this, or what would be an interesting way to use Cyclops' power, and what would be cool about this kind of thing. And so then they just did all of it. And so an action scene is never just the X-Men punch people. It's always, someone over there do this creative thing and someone over here doing this creative thing. It's kind of like a dance.
I think it's also the comic accuracy of these characters from the 90s show carrying over, because, you know, the movies will do all these different redesigns and even change how the powers work. And every cartoon that followed this has changed ages and all this stuff. Here, we just have the X-Men as we know them, and their powers work as we know them to. Mm-hmm. And so it's able to look great and accurate and everything. And I think, yeah, it's good. Yeah. It's great when it's in motion. They fight Sentinels, they fight Master Mold. Beast does quotes, but I find them to be less interesting and intellectual and charming this time around.
Yes, I think you're right.
I think the 90s cartoon, they were always trying to put in their favorite quotes and trying to one-up each other. They had all these old sayings, but this Beast just kind of has a real, like, a penny saved is a penny earned kind of mentality.
Well, I feel like it came more from, like, yeah, you're right. Like, it's like a flipped around way of looking for it. Like, originally they wanted to put in cool quotes, and now it's like, well, we have to have quotes. He has to do quotes. That's just a part of his character. And so in this moment, he's going to use the Sentinel as a mech. So let's Google famous quotes that would have anything to do with that and put that in.
Not to discount Brian DeMeo and the other writers on this show, but when it comes to Beast, it does seem like the 90s writers were a bit more well-read.
Right? It does.
And you know, you don't need Beast to be quoting these long dead and maybe some forgotten poets and philosophers, but to go from that Beast to the Beast that is like, I can has cheeseburger, you know, there is a noticeable difference there.
Yeah.
It's funny, they do this fight, they flew in without her, and they started the fight without her, but then Cyclops asked Storm to give them the forecast. And so Storm was just walking here?
I guess so. Maybe she flew. She could have flown. Yeah. How fast can she fly? I don't know. But it's pretty because fast. They kind of hit a wall. Like the whole team is like, okay, well, I guess we've lost. But the way that Cyclops says that line, it's like this was just all part of the plan. We always knew that we were going to get to a point where we needed to call in the big guns. And like, I just really like that moment a lot because he sort of has this knowing smile. And he like asks, like, give him the forecast or whatever.
Yeah. Everybody has cool action moments before that. Like Rogue is throwing Sentinel heads at other Sentinels. Beast, like you said, gets in the middle of a Sentinel and starts using it to fight. Wolverine's chopping them up. Bishop is there again. Hi, Bishop, you're there. But then, Storm comes in and there's some really dope music that plays while she's walking on the ground and lightning's hitting and turning the ground to glass.
She's walking on the glass that the lightning is creating in the sand.
And then she creates...
And the Sentinels are like, Omega threat detected. And it's like this whole huge thing.
Which is great that, you know, Storm is just this powerful. And I love that Storm is more than lightning in this show. Because she could just come in and zap all the Sentinels with lightning, but she doesn't. She creates glass out of the ground with lightning, and then creates a giant twister of rock and glass and sucks all the Sentinels into it.
Yep.
And it's great.
Smashes them down.
Yeah, and it's great because the movies definitely always were like, she shoots lightning, that's her power.
You know, lightning.
But 97 is very much like she controls all the weather, and that's cool, and it should be cool. And yes, I definitely like this moment. I love the music. I love the look. I am so happy Storm gets some of these cool moments.
Yes, me too.
But I know you're most happy with when Master Mold shows up. Wolverine charges at Master Mold. Word. And Gambit jumps on Wolverine like a horse. Charges
like
his
he's
claws.
riding him. This is a weird moment, Eric.
Charges his claws. He jumps on Morph, who turns into Blob and bounces Wolverine up the Master Mold head, and then the head explodes.
Yes.
You know, when
that
when
does
the trailer
happen
for this show came out, you sent me something about Gambit charging up Wolverine's claws, and you were so excited. What happened? Did you change your mind in this scene?
Listen, it does look cool. It looks cool until you think about it at all.
When you think about that, this Wolverine is 5'3".
He's running. Yeah, well, for one thing, he's running and Gambit's all cool and like on his shoulders or something. It looks cool. But when you think about it, you have to be like, okay, so where, like, he's just standing on his back and he's just why is any of this and then he's charging his claws and it's like, I guess everything else that he charges explodes, but I guess this particular thing
I know
will just transfer the energy to something else. So it's that kind of thing. We're like, I like the image. It's cool. They both look cool doing it. But if you think about it, it's weird.
I can't remember this happening in the normal 616 comics. It probably has. But I remember in Ultimate X-Men, Gambit charged Wolverine's skeleton. And the bone, the skeleton doesn't explode because of the adamantium. But everything else does. And so Wolverine, has to heal big time.
Oh my gosh, that's horrible.
Well, I mean, that's what I would assume happens. But like you said, in this one, no, they just explode the energy and Wolverine's fine. Like, it shouldn't just be his claws that charge up. His whole skeleton should explode. And so he should be blasting from the inside out.
Yeah. So, I mean, fun imagery, I guess. But, Yeah.
We never said Roberto's voice actor. Guy Agostini.
He's good. I like him in this.
Yeah, he is a good voice actor. He gets that snottiness. But that's kind of the end. Cyclops tells Val Cooper, this was a team effort. And Val arrests Trask and everything. And Trask is blah, blah, blah. Humans, blah, blah, blah. What does he say? Tolerance is extinction.
Guy Ritchie says that in the interview.
Oh, was that Guy Ritchie? Okay.
Yeah.
But Cyclops looks at his team as like it was a team effort. They all did this. And so they're playing basketball and Cyclops decides the team is doing well without him. And so he announces that him and Jean are going to leave the X-Men. And a lot of the team are like, well, that's kind of lame. We understand it, but it sucks. Jubilee says they were the first students. If they leave, what are the X-Men? Who will lead us? And as she says that, the alarm bells go off and they go into the study and there's somebody there holding a book that says The Last Will and Testament of Charles Francis Xavier. And it turns out that Professor X has left everything, including the X-Men, to Magneto.
The end. That's the end of the first episode.
Cliffhanger, bump, bump, bump.
Yeah.
Gonna be lots of cliffhangers here. We're back to serialized storytelling.
Like, crazy serialized. Yeah.
Yeah.
For real. So, what did you think initially and on the second watch?
So, I watched the first 5 episodes of this in a row when I first watched this show because I was going to be like, no, I'm going to wait till it's all done or until I finish the 90s show. And I got tired of seeing spoiler-ish things on Instagram. So I decided to watch them all. So the first 5 episodes all sort of blended together in a way for me. Watching it the first time, I think I was most struck by the Cyclops characterization on just how cool and confident he is. I was impressed by the action animation. You see it when, like, Cyclops is using his blast to slide him around on the ground.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't move his feet as much, but he's kind of like surfing using his powers or skating.
Yeah, that's cool.
I think I found this episode to be a bit outside of that stuff and having to set the status quo. I think I just found it a bit bland in terms of the story and the threat and stuff. But I get that they're having to do that to reinstate everything.
Right, yeah.
Like, you can't do the first episode where you're fighting Cassandra Nova. It'd be weird if Mojo was the first villain they're dealing with out of the gate.
Yes.
But at the same time, this first episode, it's good, and I'm like, yeah, let's keep watching, let's see what they do, but it's not the best this X-Men 97 series does.
Yeah.
And I think maybe something like Knights of the Sentinels landed a little bit more, but that was a 2-parter as well.
It was the first time that you'd really seen that.
Yeah. Here, I'm kind of like, oh, Friends of Humanity and Sentinels again. But it's good. I'm glad I watched some of these earlier episodes in a row, because if I had watched this episode, I might have spent the first week being a little unsure of things.
All right.
So what did you think when you first watched this first episode, Hilary?
I'm pretty sure that I watched at least 2 right out of the gate. My husband does not like to binge things. It's a deep sadness in my life. Yeah. And so I didn't get to watch. I know. I didn't get to watch so many. So I think I had a bit of the similar, like they kind of run together a little bit. So when I watched it this time, I was a little like, oh, it's over. Okay. But I think I felt more like glad that they were doing like the Friends of Humanity and the Sentinels, because it felt like solidifying for the viewer that this is the world that we're in. Like, we are definitely doing the same stuff.
It's still the 90s cartoon, yes.
Yeah. I felt like it was like a really purposeful, we're not going too nuts. You know what to expect. And you got to have like the really classic fight with all of the X-Men that you like from this show. And fighting Sentinels and stuff. And they were kind of like zombified Sentinels, so it was a little interesting. And yeah, I think I liked it. I think I liked just having, especially after slogging through the last season of the animated series, it felt very like quintessential, just a simple, straightforward X-Men episode. And I liked that about it. I think that they spent all of their new energy on character stuff rather than story stuff. So like you would see things like Cyclops being moody and Wolverine being a little more interested in Jean and things like that. I feel like that's where they put their energy for doing something a little new. And I think that was probably a good choice given the directions that they go in this season, that they like lean heavy into like relationship and that kind of thing.
I mean, I think because everybody thinks everybody likes what they like, I think there might be the assumption that everybody watched the 90s cartoon. If you're our age, you watched the 90s cartoon. And, that's not true. And like I said, I know people who have watched X-Men 97 and never watched the 90s cartoon. And, they asked if they should. I'm like, you might, but if you like X-Men 97, you might not necessarily love the 90s cartoon.
Yeah, it's different
because
enough.
They're different tones.
Yeah.
So I think this show has a slight unenviable task of having to be the continuation for people who want to be 5 again, and for people who never watched the 90s cartoon. So you got to reintroduce, like you said, if all you know is the movies, or you don't even know the movies, then you do kind of have to reintroduce the concept of Sentinels and the Friends of Humanity. And you have to reintroduce all these character quos and status quos and, Magneto and stuff. So there is that. And so I guess I give it a pass. I just don't think this is their strongest episode, but
yeah,
I'm glad I had the next one and the one after that to go through.
Yeah, that's true. That's definitely true. Yeah. So the next time that we talk about the animated series is going to be Mutant Liberation Begins on X-Men 97.
Oh, finally!
Finally, Mutant Liberation
Everybody keeps talking about it, but nobody does anything.
And that is what will be happening next animated episode. So thanks for waiting to do that with me. That was really fun to finally get talking about the new season.
Yeah, and we'll be doing it for the rest of our lives because there's definitely more seasons coming.
Oh, I see. Okay, I'm just going to... One more thing. I did not know that they were going to do more. And so I got to the end and I was like, oh, well, they have to do more, right? And I was like floored. I was ready for this to be it. Anyway.
That's funny.
Okay.
No, it's like the highest rated thing that's ever happened on Disney Plus.
Is that true?
I don't know if it's probably not true, but it's one like they
But it's popular.
It's very popular. They're very happy with the results.
Oh, that's so exciting. The things that I like are never, it's always, I'm like, I love that season. When are they doing more? And they were like, we canceled it 3 months ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you to Prophetic Music for our theme song. Previously on X-Men is brought to you by the Radio Meanwhile Network. Other shows on the network include This Endorian Life, 90s Music Got Me Like, and 90210 Here We Go. Follow us on Facebook and be sure to follow the network on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads for info on all of our shows. Please rate, subscribe, and share the show wherever you get your podcasts.
Bye!